I got nightmares in my head, I fear. Thoughts build up until I can't hear. My mind fills up into a creature, and it haunts me somewhere much deeper. I got nightmares in my head, I fear. Thoughts build up until I can't hear. That my mind fills up into a creature, and it haunts me somewhere much
Authorities
deeper.
have today confirmed the body found in a mountainous region of Tenerife is Jay Slater's. The Canary Islands High Court of Justice said the body was ID'd by fingerprints and that Jay had suffered multiple injuries. Jay's devastated mother, Debunking, said the confirmation was the worst news. She said, and I quote, "I just can't believe this could happen to my beautiful boy. Our hearts are broken." Authorities say Jay's death was due to trauma consistent with a fall in a rocky area. A helicopter was yesterday used to recover Jay's body in the remote northwest Masker ravine. He had travelled to an Airbnb there with two men after a night of partying. After missing the bus, Jay attempted the 11-hour walk back to his own accommodation. He made a final call to friend Lucy Law to say he was lost, needed water, and only had 1% phone battery. She today paid an emotional tribute, saying she was lost for words.
Honestly, lost for words. Always the happiest and most smiley person in the room. You was one of a kind, Jay, and you'll be missed more than you know. I'm sure you'll have your dancing shoes polished and ready, waiting for us all. We all love you, buddy. Fly high. Okay, so we are going to be, first of all, hi everyone. Good to see you. Raggedy Hobo says, I answered yes to the poll, but meant relatively. Okay. So we really want to just take stock of where we are 5 weeks later. And obviously, I also do want to address some of your questions and comments. Aloha, Iceland. Good to see you. There are a couple of people on this chat that I've actually met in person. Iceland is one of them. Good to see you here. We've got a first question from First Motorhome. The question is, why are you so rude and arrogant when people ask questions and don't agree with you? Why are you so rude and arrogant? That's the first question. That's the first question that's come up. Why are you so rude and arrogant? That's the first question that's come up. Any thoughts on that, guys? I don't think I should be in a position to answer it. Any thoughts on that? Any thoughts? So we had to deal with some of your thoughts and questions. And the first thought is why I'm so rude and arrogant. Any thoughts on that? Any thoughts? Should we focus on this for a while? How rude and arrogant I am. Should we talk about that? So instead of talking about Jay Slater and searching for a 19-year-old and what's happened to him and the fact that this 19-year-old has died, let's not even talk about that. Yeah, so is that how we're going to start off today? Okay, so I'd prefer to not talk about myself, but to talk about Jay Slater. right? And so there's some interesting news that has sort of come out. First of all, from the BBC, why did it take 29 days to find Jay Slater? Is it just me, or is it kind of a hypocritical question from the media? Just say, why did it take 29 days when it's like, I don't know, the media seem to be saying that they didn't really believe in the Spanish authorities. I'm talking about generally the British media seem to be undermining the Spanish authorities. And so, is there any role that the British media played in making it take so long? So, in other words, if you're criticizing the search, you're criticizing the searches. One of the things that apparently happened was the Spanish basically said, okay, the search is over, right? And it wasn't over, but they said it in order to just get the whole circus to move away, to try to get people to lose interest, to try to get people off their backs. And then they carried on searching kind of quietly. And I don't know if you remember, there was a TikToker who said, wow, I'm disgusted. This whole thing was a PR exercise. And I don't even want to be part of the search. And immediately after that, the authorities said, okay, we're canceling the search. And they didn't cancel the search. They simply wanted to do it discreetly without being hounded and badgered and criticized, right? And I think in the same way, I feel a little bit similar as well, which is you're trying to sincerely, honestly figure out what's going on. And somehow you become the bad guy. Somehow you become rude, arrogant, you don't have any qualifications, whatever, right? And it's like, aren't we here to try and find this person that's missing? Isn't that why we're here? Or are we here to sort of have kind of a party where we make jokes about Spanish people, or we accuse the Airbnb guys, or we focus on the effect of not Lucy, Brad, and we see tells in his expression. I mean, are we here to look for someone, or are we here to kind of start a bonfire and dance around it with pitchforks? Like which one is it, right? Just have a look at some of your comments here. So if you go down this article a little bit, it refers to sometimes accidents happen while abroad. You think? Isn't that what happened to Michael Mosley, like immediately preceding this? But then few ever hear about them. Few hear about these tragedies. Now, the facts were relatively simple. A lot of people wanted to make them really complicated. Treacherous terrain. Maybe if you ask the question, why did it take 29 days to find Jay Slater? Well, maybe because he was in treacherous terrain, right? Maybe because he was in treacherous terrain. And how do you get lost to begin with while you're in terrain that is unusual, unusually treacherous, unusually asymmetrical, and unusual, right? Anyway, what else does it say here that I wanted to focus on? I did highlight it here in my own text. So I think it's over here. It says, it's not this one. It's this one about, did police miss Jay's body? And I must say, that's where I sort of feel it's really hypocritical. Did the police make the mistake? Did they miss his body? And it's almost like they're suggesting, was his body like right next to the road to begin with? Was his body like right there, and they just didn't look properly, and that's why they couldn't find him? In other words, it's all the police's fault. The police who found him, and let's face it, it's the police who found Jay, not some kind of special search, outsourced search team. I mean, the police arranged for the people who were on site to do what they were doing, right? So the police actually did find Jay's body, not some kind of outsourced special team, also not any British person. It was a British person who went missing. British people were on site looking for him, but no British person actually found him. The Spanish police found him, and then after they find him, wow, did they miss Jay's body? And there's a little bit of a snipe in there, like, what's wrong with you that you couldn't find him to begin with? And I think the answer to did they miss Jay's body is because, well, everybody missed his body because it wasn't in visual range. So no one was actually walking there and stepping over his body, or walking there and stepping past his body. Nobody. The only way to get into that area, I think that they were sort of winched down from a helicopter. And the only way that they could really get the body out wasn't to take someone in with a stretcher. You had to literally winch the body out of that really inaccessible area. So this whole thing where you say, wow, did the police miss his body? It's this really cynical, hypocritical approach where you're still not acknowledging that his body was in a extremely hard to get to area. No one would have found his body if you didn't start searching in a very it's a very tricky way to search, because you need helicopters and you need people who sort of know that area, that are not going to fall themselves and die themselves and need to be rescued themselves, right? So it's really, I think, disingenuous to say, wow, did the police actually miss his body and that's why it took 29 days? No, it's extremely treacherous terrain, and that's why it took that long. And there they say teams sprang into action on difficult terrain. They talk about thick vegetation, steep ravines, and cliff faces. Weather conditions lurch between 30-degree heat and sudden drops in both temperature and visibility. That's another thing. Mist rolls in from the sea. That was something else also mentioned, was that in one of my early analysis, I mentioned how that part of the island is actually, what's the word? The dew point temperature is a factor. And so that could actually lead to rocks being slick and rocks being moist. And we know that Jay was out there fairly early in the morning. He was there, around about 9. You might think 9 is late, but in terms of a mountain, it's fairly early in the process of a mountain. A mountain can still be quite cold and wet at 9 o'clock in the morning, especially the shadowy areas of a mountain. Okay, and then it says, in snippets of information shared with the media, Guardia civil press officers referred to specialist sniffer dogs that came in from Madrid, helicopter crews, and drones. Now, if you think about it, what happened over a period of 29 days was the search got more and more specialized. The search got more and more organized. The search got more and more focused. The search got more and more, what's the word? The skill set became far more, what's the word? Narrow, if I can put it that way. And so the resources also were becoming more and more. It's not like you just go out there and you search. You now need to fly people in from Madrid, have helicopter crews flying around. You need to get drone pilots into the area. All of this costs money, right? I don't know whether any of the £70,000 that were paid into the GoFundMe, how much of that was ever paid to the Spanish authorities? I'd just be interested to know. I don't know what the answer is, but I'd be interested to know. Then it says here, human remains were found in a ravine close to the phone mast. Now, I asked you guys, did you think he would be found where he was found? And that's kind of another way of just asking, do you think he was found, did you think he would be found kind of in the Muscat area, like in the wilderness? Or did you think he would be found, did you think he would be found in some kind of dungeon. He'd be found in a yacht. He'd be found washed up on a beach. He'd be found in someone's house. He'd be found in some kind of mafia stronghold in Italy. What did you guys think? And I see almost 40% are saying that you thought he would be found somewhere else, which is a little bit like saying, I think we should have looked for him somewhere else. Well, imagine if you'd succeeded. Imagine if what you believed was likely, that he would be found somewhere else. Imagine if you had the power to influence the search, to say, stop searching there. We're not going to support the search there, and let's get searchers to go to, let's say, Crete or Greece or Portugal. There may be some criminal network in Morocco, or go to the coast of Africa, and you're going to find something there. If that had been your strategy, do you think that would have helped the search for Jay? So we've got some other attackers here. Pasteboard says, why do you refrain from answering questions directly related to your parent behavior? So I don't really understand. Are we here to talk about Jay, or should we rather just make it personal attacks on me? Should we rather make it that? Should we rather make this review of the past 5 weeks about personal attacks on me? How many of you would like to do that? Like, how many sort of support that sort of idea? How many here would like to make this live about let's talk about you and what a horrible human being you are? Like how many people are here that would like to do that? Is there anyone else that sort of would prefer that sort of approach? Anyone else? Like anyone else that just sort of feels, let's not talk about Jay, let's talk about you. I do want to move on, but I also want to deal with I want to focus a little bit on the there's like a vile aspect associated with this case, and I deal with them in the comments. Is also why I didn't even want to go live today, and so I kind of want to deal with that and then move on from that. Alan says, I just don't think you get this one. Okay. That's a good question. That is a good question. What happened to the watch that he said he stole? Well, if it is a watch. So, by the way, just thanks a lot. Thanks a lot for that, Tech. So, I've got a question, and it is fairly early on. I was suggesting that they search the Muska ravine, and only to find out that there are regular hikers that sort of go through there. And then I thought, well, if he's not in the Muska ravine, I mean, if he is there, surely hikers would have. I'm talking about the public would have found him. Would have, certainly if he was still alive. Well, then isn't the most likely place that he could be the ravine next door, the ravine north of the Muska ravine, and that is ultimately where he was. Now, something that I think is also interesting is I was investigating this case and I was trying to figure it out, and that was really my theory. My theory was, I think he's out there. I think I also said early on, if the dogs can't find him, he must be somewhere inaccessible. I said this not in hindsight, I said it before the time. And if you'd taken that analysis at face value, you could have actually found Jay earlier than he was found. I'm just saying, if you'd taken that approach, search the ravine, search the inaccessible areas, don't go and search the Airbnb, don't worry about this other stuff. You could have found Jay earlier. This is the part that I find kind of confusing. Aren't we here to find Jay? Isn't that what this was all about? Like, where is Jay? Now Jay has been found. And then afterwards you say, how could we have done this better? And then you say, well, I don't like how rude you are, or something like that. Isn't the bottom line that we are here to find Jay? And then if you say, I think you were on the right track, and I don't think these TikTokers were on the right track. Well, if and I said somewhere that no one from the British media ever contacted me, and someone said, "Wow, I can't believe he even said that. I can't believe, wow, my mind is blown that he even said that." But let's say the media did, and let's say the media said, "Wow, what maybe we could have someone focus on that particular area." Then Jay could have been found earlier, right? Jay could have been found earlier. But instead, it seems to be, no, it's not about finding Jay. It's actually about, I don't know, it's about who's right and who's stupid or something like that. And I just find it kind of strange because you have the same thing with Thomas Crooks. It's not really about what happened. It's about the groups that you belong to, that's more important actually than reality in a way, which I find really strange. Or like, isn't it important to begin with the end in mind? And isn't the beginning what happened to Jay? And let's figure this part out. And there just seems to be like a side narrative going on where I don't care what happened to Jay. I care about kind of expressing my hatred of Spain and how every place is a criminal cesspool. And I care about spreading that message and telling you how much I dislike you. I don't know. Is that like really what's going on? Like, when do we like stay on the brief? The brief is, where's Jay? How do we find him? Why does it become all of this other nonsense? What does this person say? Jay's been found now. What's the deal? The deal is, when the next thing happens again, is this all going to repeat itself? Because it's repeated itself with Michael Mosley, it's repeated itself with Nicola Bully. It actually repeats itself with every single case that I'm now covering, every single case. In other words, there's something that we don't know, conspiracy theory. Now, I understand it from the perspective of YouTube creators and TikTokers who want to make money. I understand it from that perspective. I understand this is a chance to cynically make money out of people's interest in this case. I understand that. What I don't understand is, on your side, the audience basically piling onto that saying, yeah, it makes sense that this is a conspiracy. Yeah, it makes sense that when it doesn't make sense. And when there are enough people that are trying to be opportunists, it starts to infect your way of thinking. And that's the part that really worries me. As Beck says, society is very tribal. And yeah, Kylie Rodney is an excellent example. So I've kind of been in this situation before, and I find it really disturbing. I also find it quite disturbing where you say, at the end of it, you say, you don't say, I appreciate your analysis, and it was actually quite insightful. You say, I don't like you. And I must say, my last video was probably one of the least viewed of all of the videos that I did. And Space Ranger says, you're not taking the statements of Mark Williams Thomas into consideration. Actually, I am. If you want to talk about Mark Williams Thomas, he got a shitload of media coverage. I think I saw a post that he put on X that when I last saw it, it had 1.5 million views, right? And so I was actually looking for it. There's a point where he's standing on the sidewalk, and there's like a scrum of maybe a dozen people standing around him, hanging on his every word. And he said things like, I think he said, if you let me come into the thing, I'll find Jay in 3 days. And then I think another 2 or 3 weeks passed after that. And so, yeah, you've got someone who made the whole criminal underworld case. And I'm sorry, but are you saying that someone followed Jay into the mountains, kind of hoped that he would climb up a ravine area, and then he pushed him down? Okay, for what? What did Jay do that was so? Is this a case where Jay stole someone's Rolex and then someone else murdered him because they didn't like the fact that he stole the Rolex? In other words, Jay didn't steal Kasim's Rolex if he stole a Rolex. Are you saying that Jay was murdered because someone else didn't like the fact that he stole someone's watch? Is that your theory? Heidi says, I'll have to catch up on the first part later. No, you probably want to miss the first part. You got it there. There are many fake people out there. Okay. Rebecca says, I think Mark Williams Thomas just did this for. I'm just saying, you had a guy like Mark Williams Thomas who had a theory, and the media hung on his every single word. Did that theory help find Jay at the end of the day? I think one thing that Mark Williams Thomas did that I appreciated was he showed the location of the ping, which I think the authorities didn't want to show because they didn't want people wandering in that area. That was, I think, their reasoning, which if you think about it, the Spanish and the Portuguese and other European agencies have a different way of doing things. And that's something else that's brought up by the British media. Basically, why can't you be completely transparent about everything? Why can't you give press briefings every hour or every day? Why can't you just tell us everything constantly about what's happening? And the British approach, is that the best approach? Did that work in the Madeleine McCann case? Did that work in the John Benet Ramsey case? In other words, does PR help to find people? Did PR help to find people in the Kylie Rodney case? Can you think of one case where PR has helped find someone? And I think there might be a couple of cases. I know in the Gabby Petito case, it wasn't PR, but the public did play a role. Someone drove by in a van and they saw Gabby on the side of the road, and so it did actually help. But generally, I would say it doesn't help. And you actually see more and more in corners of America where they say, we're not going to give you any information. We're not going to compromise this investigation by telling you what we know. We're simply not going to tell you. Colorado is a very good example of that, where they basically have a protocol now where they say, we are not going to share information with you because we know how it can damage the case, right? That's kind of a insensitive remark, but there's some truth in it, where you say walking off a cliff, what stupidity. And that is why I think there were a couple of silly mistakes, going in the wrong direction, going when he went to begin with. So in other words, instead of just waiting, he could have just taken a few photos of the view and then stayed where he was, charged his phone. I mean, one reason to stay where he was would be just charge your phone. And so he made a couple of stupid mistakes, check where you are, and so on. But to be honest, I've just come back from a road trip where we made a really stupid mistake, where there were three of us in the vehicle, and we said, there's not really a lot of fuel in the vehicle, but there's a place just around the corner here. It's a beautiful pass. Should we go there? And all three of us decided to chance it. And and we almost didn't make it. And you could say that's a stupid mistake, and it was, but we took a risk. And sometimes you get away with it. We ultimately came back, and by the way, where we were, there was also no cell signal, and we had less than 3 liters of fuel when we filled up. So that is how close that actually was. People take risks all the time. We just don't pay for them all the time. Now, in this case, I wouldn't be surprised if part of that risk psychology was that he was on a particular substance, perhaps cocaine, perhaps um, ecstasy, perhaps he was still somewhat intoxicated even with alcohol. And that gave him a unnatural level of confidence, to do what he wanted to do. And so I don't think it's just as simple as stupidity. I think it is being compromised. Bear in mind, he was also sleep deprived. He's also a young man who's trying to prove that I can get out of the situation. The sea's just there. I'm sure I can do this. And so, in his attempt to prove himself, he disproved himself. Just a quick little comment. Let's just try and be civil to one another and try and be polite. If you can't, you're not going to be allowed to comment on this channel ever again. So if you can't, I know people have said I'm very rude. If rudeness is really important to you, then you also need to not be rude. So mods, if you see like really lots of all caps and things, you really have my permission just to boot people off the channel. You won't be able to comment ever again. So if you want to be rude, be as rude as you want to be. It's going to be your last chance. Like really let me have it, and then obviously you're not going to be able to comment here ever again. So make it count. Really make it count. I think it's obvious that he fell, Michelle. I think it is obvious. Yeah, so there we have it. Sharon says, you've covered this well. As far as I'm concerned, it's sad that he went off the road to his demise. Now, I do want to quickly show a picture of that before we go on. I do want to continue with this analysis as well. Where is it? Sorry, just a second. So, it shouldn't be necessary to even say this, but I remember quite a few comments, like numerous comments with people saying the path of least resistance is taking this road back, this road that you see on screen. That's the path of least resistance, right? If you're driving, then you would take the road. But if you've been walking, then it's not only an up and down road, and it's quite a steep uphill, it's a road that kind of kicks back on itself. And this is just a small snapshot of the whole road, that the road like crinkles a heck of a lot in other places as well. And so the path of least resistance isn't going this whole way around this crinkly road that sort of zigzags constantly. The path of least resistance is two things. It is downhill, like downhill all the way to the sea, and then also shortcut. So instead of going like walk along there and walk along there and walk along there, you then cut through there. And we know that he was doing that anyway. And so at the end of the day, it's also not what you think is the path of least resistance, it's what he thought. And of course, he made the mistake thinking, I'm close to my hotel is at the sea, there's the sea, if I go that way, that's where it is, right? And, you could say, how could he be so stupid? Well, again, when I was on this road trip with friends, you could say, well, surely you can see on your vehicle what the range is that you need to go. And the answer is yes, we could, and we did see it. The funny thing is, once we went up this really steep pass, and once we came down, suddenly the range changed really rapidly. It was like dropping in a way I've never seen it before. It was showing this number, then that number, then that number. Suddenly it was so in other words, something unexpected happened. Something that you thought you knew was obvious turned out not to be obvious. Another thing that you thought was obvious is, well, I've got a cell phone signal here. Just next to the tar road is a dirt road, basically going parallel to it. Well, there's not a cell signal there. Who knew? And then you persist, right? You persist in what's going on. What is the other thing? Yeah, and there is a sort of an aspect where you think, I think I can get away with this. I know I'm in a bit of trouble, but I think I might be able to get away with this. And then sometimes you do, but sometimes you don't, right? So someone says he was killed and put there. Now if he was put there, then there must be some sign that he was killed. So in other words, was he killed with a bullet? Well, where's the sign of the bullet? Was he stabbed? Well, you know what? Blunt force trauma and stab wounds are totally different. So why is there no evidence of that? So it's one thing to speculate in that area. It's so hard to get into that area. He couldn't have been put there. He couldn't have been carried there in a stretcher and put there, because even the people who found him couldn't get there other than being winched down through a helicopter. Couple of other questions. Emma says, how did his phone end up in the middle of a very heavy brush and cacti, an area police couldn't get into? So his phone was never found. In fact, I don't even know whether his phone has been found to date. I don't know. Probably if his phone hasn't been found, the police wouldn't want to say that, because you probably get looky-loos going there to try and find his phone in very dangerous area. So the correct thing here is his phone pinged in that area, right? And you're absolutely right to say the area where his phone pinged, that seems a bit strange. But you're assuming that the area of the ping is exactly there when it's not a flat terrain. There are big mountains on either side that can interfere with the signal. And I don't know about you, I use an app that tracks your movements. And when I've been in places like Manhattan and other places, the signal squiggles because it's not managing to hit the satellite properly. And so it distorts. And so the exact location isn't so exact after all. So at the end of the day, the ping was a general indicator for where Jay was, and it proved to be true. The point isn't to go to that exact ping mark, although you probably should. The point is to use that as a starting point, as they did in the Kylie Rodney case. Right? Does that make sense? Okay, so I want to kind of move on to something else. Let's just have a look at a couple of other images. Was Jay scared? And I actually think the problem was that he wasn't scared. The problem was that when he was in the ravine area, he wasn't scared. When Brad and him spoke about, and I mean, just this question is quite interesting. Why wasn't he scared? And you might say he was scared, but let's just, for the sake of argument, say that he wasn't scared. If I had been in that situation, I would have said, wow, I'm in the middle of nowhere. I'm scared. I'm frightened. I'm lost. Lucy, won't you send someone to pick me up? Or I could be really far from my hotel. I could be very nearby, but it's also possible that I'm really far from the hotel. Wow, I think I better go back the way I came, or I could get lost, kind of thing. Another thing is, if I'm lost, well, you go back the way you came. By the way, when I was in Florida, I went to the park where Brian Laundrie's remains were found, and I actually got lost. I was probably lost for easy about half an hour, which is a heck of a long time to be lost in a wilderness area. And the way I got out of that, I didn't have a cell signal. I had my cell phone, but I didn't have a signal. It was late in the day. I didn't come across a single person in that final half hour. It was also, the sun was setting. It was near the end of the day. I was actually starting to become quite frightened. And all I did was I basically tried to walk. I tried to retrace my steps as far as I could remember them, and that's how I got out of that situation. And it wasn't fun because I didn't want to walk that whole way all over again. I would have preferred to find my way back, taking a shortcut or taking some other kind of scenic route, if that makes sense. So when you've walked a long way and you don't know where you are, the last thing you want to do is walk that whole long way in reverse. It's kind of tedious, right? And it also means that you're going to have to walk that whole length of time all over again and kind of have nothing to show for it except the effort. And it's kind of admitting that you've made a mistake, in the sense that I'm not going to try and find my way through this other terrain because I don't know where I am. I'm going to go back the same exact route, and that's not very fun in this situation, right? How would anybody know exactly where that ravine was? Yeah, good point. Alice says, I lived on Gran Canaria for 3.5 years. There you go. I think when you say treacherous, some people just hear a word that has no meaning. When you say rugged, has no meaning. When you say it's very rugged, I don't know what that means, so I'm just not going to process it. I think so too. Gimti says, I couldn't sleep yesterday, and by nightfall I was seeing shadows as my cat's moving. When I drove back from Cape Town, I hadn't slept a lot the night before. There was a storm. There was banging going on the whole night. There were other things that were bothering me as well, and I could have continued driving. And I also made the decision, and it's kind of admitting your own weakness. I made the decision. I'm compromised, so I'm going to spend more money to stay over because I don't want to take a risk. Now, a younger me wouldn't have done that. Like I've driven many hours, very late at night, even leaving Cape Town like 10 o'clock at night and driving right through the night. A younger me would have done that regardless. But that's the difference between the maturity level of a young person and an older person. A younger person can also say, I can stay awake kind of forever. And maybe sometimes they can. Jane says, you're guessing. Do you know what Jay said to Brad? So have you paid attention to that dialogue? So what did Brad say and what did Lucy say? And so if you go into that and you pay careful attention to those details, then what was going on was this idea that he was not a long drive away from where he needed to be, something like 40 minutes drive. And you might think 40 minutes is just over there. It's really not very far away. I can't remember whether he said, I can't actually remember now whether he said 15 minutes or 50 minutes, but maybe Jay registered it as 15 minutes. And so if Jay thought, well, it's only 15 minutes drive, then how far could it possibly be to walk? And so because he doesn't have cell signal and he can't confirm it, he's now making an assumption just like we did when we made our choice to go off-road. We assumed, you know what, it's probably not that far. That's also what we assumed. And it turned out it was further than we thought, but it was not too far. Well, in Jay's case, that assumption was wrong. Of course, we'd also done a search on our phones before, and we knew it wasn't hundreds of kilometers away. And funnily enough, we did a search putting the wrong name in that did show hundreds of kilometers away, and then we wouldn't have done what we were trying to do. Right? So that's also important. So I must say, comments like this that I find kind of annoying. It's basically where you kind of shake your head and you say, I don't think any of this is true. I don't think Jay even existed. And it kind of becomes like a circus. What's concrete evidence that that he signed a logbook or something like that? There were several witnesses who saw him, including the lady who hired it out. She saw him twice. But I guess you can say that's not concrete enough for me. But I must say, at this point, I find comments like that really annoying. It's like, I don't know. I find that definitely quite annoying. Spanish police reported the phone was found 15 minutes away from his body. So I really don't like this kind of thing. Multiple question marks and all caps. But let's see if this is true. Let's Google it. Any of you think that this is true? Do you guys, how many of you think that what this lady's saying is true? And she seems very convinced. I mean, it's exclamation mark. How can you not know this? Is there anyone here that thinks that this is true? Yeah, there's the answer. The ping was 15 minutes away. So, really you've got to pay attention to the details and get the details right. Otherwise, it's not going to be right. If you Google Spanish police found Jay SLATER phone, right, then what does it say? They found the last known location of the phone. They haven't found the phone as far as we know. Jay's phone was last located where the ping was left, right? Where Jay last used his phone. So I don't know where you're getting your information from. I don't know whether you're getting it from just how you thinking about it or some other creator who's making assumptions. I don't know. I don't know also why you say, I hope the truth comes out in the end. What truth? Like, what truth do you want to come out? I mean, one thing that I'd like to know is, what is the story about the watch? Is there a watch? Is the Rolex, is it code for ecstasy? And if not, where did all of that come from? So I would be interested to know about that. Let's have a look at some other comments. Yeah, he was identified with fingerprints. Okay. Do you guys realize that if you're a YouTuber or a TikToker or some kind of creator online and you don't have a job and you're trying to make money, and a high-profile case comes around. Maybe you in true crime, maybe you're not, but a high-profile case comes around, and you're looking at this case, and your sole preoccupation is money. Like your sole thing is, how can I make the maximum amount of money out of this? Have you guys thought about this? Then the way to go is you tell the most shocking, sensational stories constantly, right? And it's not really about telling the truth or giving information. It's about making money. It's about getting views and getting attention and using shock value to get that. And the part that I don't really understand is why so many people are so gullible in terms of that. Someone's trying to make money by scaring you and shocking you and telling you a sensational story, and then that's exactly what they do. And then you have this huge crowd of people that are convinced, and it's not just one TikToker or YouTuber, it's a whole group of them that are doing exactly the same thing. And then you have this whole crowd of people believing in something that doesn't make any sense, but it's all being repeated and recycled because they're all on this whole money train. Do you guys not notice that it's happening? I know many of you do, but well, there's some of you that they don't like go, this is just a cynical attempt to make money. So here's Fran again. She says, you trying to make money off this case on this channel. So this is what I don't really understand. I'm a true crime YouTuber and I do it for a living. I don't really understand this. So your job, do you go to your job and what is your job, Fran? Do you have a job? Do you go to work and say, I'm going to do this work for free, right? Just to give you a little insight here, myself and my graphic designer went to Cape Town to basically to cover a series of books that I wrote in Cape Town. And then this case broke. And so we had to basically cover this while we were in Cape Town. We weren't actually able to do what we were meant to do there, right? We didn't what's the word? We didn't go and kind of have like a what's the word? It wasn't a holiday. It wasn't a holiday. I just sort of wonder, when you have a job, do you say, please, I'm going to do my job, but please don't pay me. It's kind of a charity. I just want to see this person again. Is Fran still here? Okay, Fran is not going to be here any longer. And I do want to so someone is saying, I don't understand why you covering this as true crime, because it's important to be able to tell the difference between what's a crime and what's not. It's also important to tell the difference between certain levels of criminality and certain levels of accident. And part of this channel is about reality, like what is going on in the real world. And we try to be astute with that. One thing that I certainly feel proud about is, despite the haters that are here, that don't know me, I've actually met people who tell me that I've changed their lives for the better in ways that I couldn't even have imagined. People that have read my books, people that have known me for a long time, where in a way they've been able to think more effectively about their own lives and their own situations. And that is a result that I'm very pleased about, because it makes me feel like, in my own little special way, maybe maybe for some people, I'm leaving this world a better place. I'm improving certain families' lives and certain people's experiences, rather than just sucking up their attention spans. I'm actually helping them to think a little bit better about the world and real life. And I think that is something worth achieving in a world that is just absolutely um, infected with fake news, fakery, bullshitters, and all that kind of thing. I mean, how many people are out there that, in a way, shoot themselves in the foot by actually seriously trying to and sincerely trying to figure out what is really going on, when the other route is so much easier to take? Jane says, I think something happened in this case. I don't think it was a plethora of bad decisions. Okay, so can you expand on that? So if you think something happened, what did happen? Can you be a bit more specific? Okay, so I want to go back to this BBC News article, and where are we? We're almost at the first hour that's gone. I really don't want to be for too much longer than that. So I think just before we go out of that, if you think about it, why wasn't Jay scared? Like why wasn't he not scared when he, for example, he went with these two guys that he barely knew? Why wasn't he afraid? One of them was actually a convicted criminal. When he ended up in this environment that he didn't know, why wasn't he afraid? When he went out into the wilderness, why wasn't he afraid? And I do think there was a point where he was somewhat afraid, just that he didn't know really how to deal with it. Because I think that fear was conveyed to Lucy. I mean, he was laughing when he spoke to Brad, but when he spoke to Lucy, it had changed, and there was a bit of a sense of, wow, I don't really know where I am. And that actually caused Lucy to call the police, I think 15 minutes later. So, she got the sense he's thirsty, he's lost, he's already cut himself, he's in quite a bad situation. And she was right. And look where we are now. And so if he had been more afraid, the right approach would have been just to stay where he was, or to go back to the tar road. I'm sure he wasn't that lost that he didn't know where that was. But who knows? Okay. And this is the kind of terrain that he was faced with. I will come back to it a little bit later. So if you look at this image on screen, where Jay was found was just over this corner, so just kind of around this side, and then the sea's over there, and there's a little house over here, and who knows, Jay may have thought, well, there's a house over here, there's probably going to be more houses the further I go. And there's something quite tempting about this scene. You've got mist here, it's quite soft, there's the sea around the corner. It's almost like saying, just around the corner is something, right? And he doesn't want to take these roads. He's just thinking, maybe if I go down here, I'll get to where the road ultimately is trying to get to. Except, as you can see, once you go around this corner, there's all of this treacherous terrain. And then he just continues going down this path of least resistance, which becomes more and more and more treacherous, right? But basically, this is what searchers were presented with, this kind of scene. And it doesn't help searching all over here where you can see. You need to be searching in there and down there where you can't see. And it took quite a while to kind of reach that point, right? Okay, so I'm going to just take this off, put that back on. And go back to YouTube. So questions remain as to whether this was the best strategy. So where's that? Fast forward to last week. Okay, so now I want to kind of go into a different area where the British media, it's not just the BBC, it's seemingly all of them, basically say, you know what, we think that the police strategy was wrong in Tenerife. So they say here, the Guardia Civil have declined to answer any questions about this. So did they unwittingly walk past him first time round? What do you think about that question? What do you think about this question that the Guardia Civil just like literally walked past Shay? He was lying there and they just walked by him. What do you think about that question? I mean, if he was found in this inaccessible gorge, then no one could have just walked past him first time round. It's kind of a ridiculous question. Maybe we reason differently, but the whole point is that Jay didn't think it was a 10-hour walk. We know it was a 10-hour walk, but Jay didn't know that. Jay obviously assumed that if it was a 15-minute drive or even a 15-minute drive, that it wasn't a very long walk, especially if he took a shortcut. If the road had to stick to the mountainside, well, if he took a shortcut, it wouldn't be a 10-hour walk. I don't know why that's so hard to, is that such a difficult thing to imagine? Okay, so the part that I want to kind of emphasize is where they talk about let's just see if I can find it. Questions remain as to whether this was the best strategy. Where is that? Just trying to find that. I think it's maybe a bit further up. Okay, so this is quite interesting. What few knew until now beyond the tight-knit circle in Tenerife was that after the police formally called off the search, it actually continued. And so that puts into perspective that whole comment about this is all a PR exercise and I'm disgusted. I'm not going to. The police were actually trying to get public interest and people to volunteer. And then when that didn't happen, they thought, you know what, probably the right way to deal with this is we'll just focus, we'll make it kind of an internal thing, right? It appears the Guardia Civil may have hoped that announcing that stop searching would calm some of the attention around the case, as the search had certainly not ended. And then they say they carried out discreet searches to deter curious onlookers. Now, why do they need to deter curious onlookers? Well, the reason is if they start going into inaccessible areas, if they start going into dangerous areas, then you could have the rescuers needing to be rescued. You could have the public getting themselves into a serious situation where they're going to need to be rescued as well. I don't know. I find that completely sensible. Then you have questions remain as to whether this was the best strategy. And this is where it's quite interesting. The British say perhaps an approach more aligned to British police in missing person searches where constant updates are provided for transparency could have prevented some wild conspiracies. So I'm really interested to hear what you guys think about this. Think about this. Do you think that constant updates could have prevented some of the wild conspiracies? Let's hear it. Do you think that if the authorities had given constant updates all the time, that it would actually just have stopped these wild conspiracies from taking place? I don't. I think it would have made it 10 times worse, if not 1,000 times worse. So I must say, when the British media say questions remain as to whether this was the best strategy, I would say no. I think it was a good strategy. And guess what? It worked. They did find him. And no one else had to be rescued as well. You know, there was actually another hiker where there was this thought of he needed to be rescued, and he said he didn't need to be rescued. But you could have had a real situation like that where people are going into this area where someone else has literally done just that and died, and now you almost sucking other people into that area, and you could have exactly the same thing happen. They don't want that to happen. They're trying to be cautious, right? And so I think that was the best strategy. You don't want people who unfamiliar, looky-loos coming there and then getting themselves into trouble and then really complicating the whole situation. Constant updates provided for transparency. Has that helped in the Madeleine McCann case? Has that helped in the JonBenet Ramsey case? Did that help in the search for Nicola Bully? You had constant updates, and then suddenly the police stopped, and they basically said, we're not going to tell you anymore, because the more updates we give you, the more you guys go nuts, right? And so I would say what, if anything, the way that the authorities need to learn from this is to lock out social media and to lock out the media and say, we're not going to give you any information. We'll talk to the family. We're not talking to the media whatsoever, because we don't need a circus. We don't need a circus sideshow while we're trying to do our work. Also, we don't need to be criticized while we're trying to do what we need to be doing. Because let's face it, it's not in social media's interest that Jay's found, because then the whole party is over. And it's not in social media's interest that the truth is found out, because then it's also over. But you can have endless conspiracies, and you can have endless, maybe it's this, maybe it's that, maybe we should accuse this person. And what happens when you have that? You have like a snake eating its tail. And the only person who profits out of that is the social media creator. Literally everyone else, literally every single other person, it's to their disadvantage. Their time is wasted, their attention spans are wasted, resources are wasted as well. And it's a really serious thing that's taking place in social media. And I'm going to be sharing with you something that's come out as a result of the Jay SLATER case, where they're thinking about putting up laws to stop this, laws to address this. And I think it's about time they did, because it's a free fall going on in social media. And there are a lot of people that are participating in it, that are basically, that jump on this bandwagon and seem to have a rip-roaring time at everyone else's expense. So, you know, the way to deal with these cases in the future is to have no updates and very minimal news, unless there's something like we found Jay. Otherwise, just tell the family. You can keep the family in your confidence, and what they want to tell people is up to them. Of course, if the family do that, then the family become attacked, and if that's what they want, then good luck to them. But look at this. It is a question that Lancashire police had to grapple with during a similar torrent of interest that dominated the search for Nicola Bully. You've got exactly the same situation here. Nicola Bully was found. She wasn't found that far away. When she was found, no one would accept it, because that whole infection of conspiracy garbage is now gone into people's minds, and they're like, oh, Nicola was found. I don't believe that she just fell into the river. There's a serial killer out there, because that's what people want to believe. That's just how people are. And that kind of sick way of thinking is becoming worse and worse and worse. People are now just unwilling to accept reality at face value. So God help you with your own life if that's you. Like in your own life, someone says, oh, sorry, I just by mistake left this here. Oh, no, I think you're trying to kill me, kind of thing. No, that's not what's going on. You're not that important. Titsub says, I like your avatar, by the way, or the name. True crime sleuths are turning innocent people's lives upside down. True crime sleuths are becoming fake criminals of their own accord. They're becoming fake news merchants. They are becoming a criminal element in their own right, and they are turning our society into a distrusting, hateful, horrible society. Really. I must say, I get this so often in true crime where people say, people go missing all the time. Why are we paying attention to this one? It's almost like you're saying, let's rather not pay attention to it. Okay, then which case do you want to pay attention to? And the point is, you pay attention to a case in order to not only figure out that case, but also think about what don't we understand here, and how are people misleading themselves. And so if this had to happen again, someone goes missing in the wilderness, how do you learn from this case? Well, one of the things I think you would say is, let's pay attention to the topography. Let's spend a little bit of time learning about this landscape and appreciating that we might need to be a little patient here. Not only patient, maybe we need to um, address the right search strategy. It's not going to work just to put on a day pack and go for an amble, somewhere and then come back. You don't find anything. Well, let's do that the next day and hope for the best. Let's do that the next day and hope for the best. I think what you learn from this is we're not really that good at looking for missing people in the wilderness. And in order to, once you've not found anything in a week, maybe you need to step up and search in a much more targeted way, and you need to focus on perhaps the inaccessible areas, right? Okay, so so in terms of this whole thing, questions remain whether this was the best strategy. Here's another article saying almost the same thing. The Guardia Civil can learn one major lesson, right? So again, you've got the British people on the outside saying, wow, we could have done this much better. We much better than what you are. And you could have, and so what does he say? He says, you could have allocated a media liaison officer. And I'm one of those people who would say, absolutely not. What you needed here was less media. What you needed here was less um, of a kind of public circus going on, not more of a public circus. So yeah, you've got two people in the media saying, we demand absolute media transparency so that we can have a rip-roaring circus going on. No, that was something that was wrong in this case and something that wasn't helpful. And I'm the first person who would say, ideally, you would like transparency. Ideally, you would like updates and all that, but we don't live in an ideal world. We live in a world where people take this and they go and have fun with it, and they go and turn it into a party and a circus, and so that shouldn't be allowed to happen in the future. So yeah, you've got the BBC and this expert saying the same thing. Sorry, I totally disagree with you. Totally disagree. Yeah, you've got another one. I don't know what that's about. This is from Jay SLATER, the one big question Tenerife still won't answer on search. And of course, this is another British publication that's basically undermining the police search, basically saying, why did it take so long to find the missing teen? This is the same British media was saying, we are so sure from our experts that there's foul play here, blah, 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 blah. Did the police miss the body? The police never missed the body. The police never actually got to the body until they eventually got to the body. Let's have a look at this. No, maybe not. So it's actually in this terrain down here that Jay Slater, I think, started wandering. It's beyond this ridge line. And so again, you can ask, why wasn't he afraid? Why wasn't he afraid once he went down here? I think he was like leaving the path and he was just thinking, I just need to get down, down, down to the coast. Why wasn't he afraid? So you can see just over here, for example, just this is like the narrowest. If you want to sort of climb down here towards the sea, you want to start going into these ravines. That's where it's going to get steeper and steeper, right? Okay. I think the next thing I want to talk to you guys about is this article. Just see if I can bring it up. Just a second. It's from the Sunday Times, and it's a angle that I think you very likely haven't really seen. It's about bringing in legislation, bringing in the law to start to control this whole situation. And so there you have it. J Slater Charity, our mission to find the trolls who misled the search. Now, I think this is something that's not being fully acknowledged, is there are people who purposefully, deliberately, cynically misled the search. People who knew that what they were doing isn't true, and they did it on purpose, for either because they were just trying to be silly, or probably more because they were trying to profit from it in some way. In other words, it's an organized effort to make money out of someone's tragedy, but in a way that you are literally causing there to be time wasted in an investigation, right? So let's have a look. The boss of missing persons charity supporting the family of Jason has begun its own investigation to find the trolls who have targeted Slater's family and friends. So not only the family, but also friends as well, turning them into suspects. So if there's anyone on chat right now where you are absolutely sure that a family member or a friend should be a suspect, you should be aware that you might be tracked down and you might be the subject of a prosecution. So, maybe you're feeling very confident in these accusations that you're making. Well, do you want to stand up in court and defend them as well? So there were people that were sending out false leads and even ransom demands. There were people saying, you're not going to see Jay again. He owes me a lot of money. And so these were real people making real, or put it this way, they were making real demands, but demands that they wanted, but not from anyone who actually knew Jay. And so this is a real criminal element that no one's talking about. And this I find quite strange, is you want to demonize the Airbnb guys, but what about the people that we know for a fact were basically cynically trying to profit out of this by saying, we want a ransom paid and then Jay will be returned. Why is no one getting angry about them? And that's exactly what it is. It is sick. But I don't get any sense of animus towards these people. These are the real criminals in the story. I don't really see it really mentioned much in the media or on social media. He hopes the police will investigate these messages sent to Jay Slater as potential harassment and illegal misuse of telecommunications. We really need to see more of this in true crime. Like, we really need more fake crime rooted out and prosecuted, because there's a lot of it going on. There's a lot of people cynically putting out messages that they know or should know aren't true, that then cause a lot of distraction and confusion, and they profit out of this, and they need to be prosecuted. It needs to be stopped. We know for a fact that a lot of these were baseless, but you have to follow up every single lead. So I've investigated sightings of Jay Slater in Sainsbury's in Basingstoke, watching a Euros match in a pub in Droitwich, and another of him on the Eurostar. And this is the side that I think a lot of the British folk are being a little, we can criticize the Spanish, but what about criticizing people in Britain for being really, someone called me rude. This is beyond rude. This is criminal. But I somehow think you're more upset about me being rude than about this. And I mean, aren't we here to actually try and find Jay Slater? Or are we here to, for some other reason, to belong to some other group? We're going to get a case where the police will be dealing with the malicious side of it. What is it to be malicious? It's to do something with the intentional, it's to intentionally cause harm, right?
Malicious.
It's characterized by malice. It's intending or intentionally doing something that is not helpful. Malevolent, hostile, bitter, venomous, poisonous. That's this whole thing that is surrounding these cases. Mean, nasty, harmful, hurtful, vitriolic, vindictive, ill-natured, destructive, wounding, mischievous, all of these things.
Malicious.
And we're not talking about that, are we? And so while they're dealing with the malicious side, they miss an opportunity to actually rescue someone, and someone's life will be lost. This is a very real thing that is happening in true crime. While they were searching for Brian Laundrie, someone said, I think this is Brian Laundrie, and that person was almost, there was like a manhunt going on, and that person was almost killed. So here you have it. Section 217 of the Communications Act 2003 makes it an offense to send a message known to be false for the purpose of causing annoyance, inconvenience, or anxiety to another. I hope other YouTubers are paying attention to this. Those others that are out there that are sort of playing the game that we all know they are playing. And you can laugh at me when I talk about wanting to be authentic. You can laugh at me and say, "What a joke! You think you're authentic." And maybe it is a joke, but what about the real problem of people who aren't trying whatsoever to be authentic? What about that? Section 127 of the Communications Act makes it an offense, basically makes it a crime, to send messages that are known to be false for the purpose of causing annoyance, inconvenience, or anxiety. And then he says, legislation does not sufficiently address those trying to mislead a police investigation. That legislation needs to be put in place now, immediately, ASAP. Those trying to mislead a police investigation. And that includes YouTubers and TikTokers That includes people who go to places and also criticize a police investigation and say this or that. Really, are you trying to undermine a police investigation? If you are, you need to answer to that. Or cause emotional distress to a family, maliciously trying to cause emotional distress to a family. And so he wants a meeting with Yvette Cooper, the Home Secretary, and the National Police Chiefs. And then it goes even further. Working with telecom companies, phone networks, and public databases, he's determined that many of the calls and messages come from throwaway SIM cards. That just shows the intentionality going on here. The subterfuge going on to intentionally defraud people, right? The premeditation going on to bring all of this about, and one-use email addresses, which make it harder to identify potential offenders. In other cases, is cross-reference phone numbers with social media profiles to get details of the person's identity. So we may well see some arrests in this particular case of people who have been cynically trying to profit from the Jay Slater tragedy. Okay, so I think I'm kind of done with this aspect. Wonder what else we can look into. Yeah, good point. Very good point. Is there a big difference between stating an opinion adamantly, repeatedly, indignantly, on and on and on? Is there a difference between that and acting like you know what's going on? Anyone who, like, we had someone on here not that long ago who said in all caps, Jay's phone has been found 15 minutes from where his body was found. Is that stating an opinion, or is that acting like you know something for a fact? Absolutely. And so literally what we're seeing is the behavior going on online is so out of hand. We need new laws to deal with it. There's a new lawlessness going on in true crime, this place that's about the truth and about finding criminals. But if we can't, well, we'll just invent them anyway, right? And we'll become criminals in the process. Yeah, that is literally what's happening in this space. It's disgusting. It's disgusting. Okay. So I do want to share a couple of more images, and then we're gonna go on to your some of your comments left on actual videos, right? So if you're standing over here, that's kind of where the viewpoint was. You see these roads going like this. You can kind of see the road there as well. This isn't where you need to be looking. You need to be looking down there. And that's the kind of terrain that you're dealing with. Sheer faces like this. As soon as you leave the path, this is what you're dealing with. Now, are you supposed to see anyone in this kind of terrain? And I actually dealt with this in that video that so many people got upset about, where I said, missing Brit found. And then I took people through this particular hiking pass in Muscat, the one neighboring the one where he was found. And I think it was one of the least viewed because everyone said this is clickbait. That I think was one of my best videos covering the whole thing, which was that hiker actually said what the terrain was like and that he could hide in a cave. We got tremendous insight out of that particular situation. Just look at these sheer rock faces. Okay, so I want to look at some of your comments that were left on some of the YouTube videos. I think my graphic designer actually sent them to me. So let's see what she came up with. So these are some of your comments. Why is no one addressing that he was scared? If he wasn't scared, he would still be alive, most probably. If he wasn't scared, he would still be alive. What do you guys think of that? Do you agree with that? Okay, thanks a lot for that, Bria. Let's see, where's Brett Rigby? Brett, did you actually go to the area and search yourself? Brett, if you could do that, I'd really appreciate it. If you could send some footage to me, I would really appreciate that as well. I'm actually going to Europe, I think in October. I might make a little trip to Tenerife. We'll see. Brett says, it's an old volcano. There are sheer drops of hundreds of feet, which used to be lava channels. There are hundreds of ways to die in those mountains. Always good to have some local knowledge. That's interesting. Yeah, so you guys may remember that I compared this whole situation to Table Mountain, where so many people have died as well. And it's the same thing. People go there, they think it's pretty or something, and then maybe they're tired, maybe they're distracted, maybe they're taking a selfie, maybe something else, and then they basically just slip, and you die in the most silly way. Happens all the time. So I actually think if he was scared, he would still be alive. I think it's the opposite. Then there's this one. How did he end up there to begin with? While his death may have been an accident, he wasn't there by accident. There was a reason he didn't want to wait for a bus. Well, is it this real big thing? Is the reason he didn't want to wait for a bus because of some intrigue, or was he impatient? I mean, in my situation, we could have just driven another 5 or 10 minutes and put fuel in, and that would have just literally taken a couple of minutes, and then we would have been fine, but we didn't do that. Why didn't we wait? Because it's the same thing. You're kind of impatient. You don't think you need to wait. You don't want to wait. Damien says, there's a reason he left the Airbnb to walk 20 plus miles in harsh terrain. Well, he ended up walking, I think, 1 or 2 miles. And I don't think he expected to be walking much more than 2 or 3 miles. I think he thought, I'm just going to walk to where the sea is, kind of thing. So I don't know. I kind of think that there's some people are thinking logically about this, and some people think in different ways about it that are not always that reasonable. And then there's some people that are thinking logically but based on incorrect information. Mickey McLean says, what I don't get is he wanted the partying to continue, the partying. So he went nearly an hour's drive to an empty Airbnb with 2 older men. Now, again, that's incomplete information. It's true he did want the partying to continue, but it's not like they just drove to the empty Airbnb. They actually drove to a pub halfway to the Airbnb. I don't know if you know that. Mark Williams Thomas mentioned that. They drove somewhere else and had a couple of drinks. And so you could say that that was additional partying. We also don't know what happened inside the vehicle. We don't know what incentive there was to Jay to going with these men. The fact that one was a drug dealer, it's hard to imagine that there wasn't some kind of drug aspect to it. And people have said to me, you're incredibly stupid. If he wanted the partying to continue and he wanted drugs, all he needed to do was stay where he was, except that the rave was ending. Everyone was leaving the rave. His friends had left the rave. People were going home and going to sleep. So if it's 5 o'clock in the morning, 6 o'clock in the morning at the end of the third day of the rave, and you want the party to continue, you are probably going to go somewhere else. Like everybody else, you're going to go with a friend somewhere else to have the next step kind of thing. And if, let's say, you are taking drugs and you are getting intoxicated and the bar closes, the rave closes, people are leaving, then you're probably going to go somewhere that's open, aren't you? That's just the way I think about it. I don't know whether you would go to a bar at 4 or 5 o'clock in the morning in order for the party to continue. That's usually when bars close and when everyone leaves. That's how I think about it. What does Mel say? In my opinion, this was a case of youthful impatience and inexperience against an unknown environment. And I mean, that is why, I said the number one clue we all missed was his age. His age actually explains the whole thing. And, people will say, I don't really like that. It's just too simple. I want something to be more exciting. But that is, I think, and you might say, I didn't miss the fact that he was young, but you did miss how important it was. You did miss the priority that information needed to be given. There's no proof of what. So one thing I do find interesting with people who say that is they'll say, you can't prove what you're saying about that and that and that. But what I believe in is a conspiracy theory, and there's no proof with that, but that doesn't really matter. Anyway, my argument against your argument is there's no proof of it, and thus that makes my argument worth considering. Well, there's no proof of yours either. In fact, there's even less of it. So, yeah, absolutely. Emma says, we still don't know anything about the supposed Snapchat. Yeah, we don't. We don't. Well, I think his parents are devastated. I must say, one thing that I think you might say, they've got all of this money, but I think that money is very hollow. That money doesn't really make up for anything, Jay not being there. Thanks a lot, Earth. Thank you for that. Okay, let's go on to the next one. I'm still having the bugging question as to what happened at the B&B. Could a toxicology report be done? Certainly it could be done. Will it be done? I hope so. Will the results be released? I actually don't think they should be. They were released, I think, in the Riley Strain case. I think it's for the family to decide what to do with that. But I do think the toxicology will provide an additional insight into what we already know. What happened at the Airbnb? Well, one thing we know happened is that he didn't sleep, that he couldn't sleep, that he wasn't sleeping. And you kind of get the sense that at least one of the two other men was sleeping and went to sleep early on, and that Kasim slept less, but he also wanted to sleep, and the one person that didn't want to sleep was Jay. Okay, let's go on to the next one. Denise says the bit of the bit I have trouble understanding is why he didn't just stick to the road and maybe just try to hitch a lift. Why try to get to the coast through that kind of terrain in a strange country? Well, for a couple of reasons. Because the road looked like this, and because he'd already walked on this road, right? I think you're forgetting that he'd walked on this road that zigzags like this, and he doesn't want to walk on the zigzaggy road all over again. You know, it was a long walk. He's tired. He's dehydrated. He's like running out of resources. So he feels like, I don't have a lot of time. I don't have a lot of energy. I need to take a shortcut. And so that's why he gets off the road. Obviously, that was a critical mistake in hindsight, right? I actually thought the best foul play scenario here is that he did try to hitch a lift, and the person he hitched a lift with just happened to be a really bad apple. And that's why he's not in the area. That's how he got out of the area. That's how the whole foul play thing could have happened. But the problem with that whole thing is, who would be driving in that area at 8 or 9 o'clock in the morning? And ... Not impossible, but it raises other questions. Why try to get to the coast through that kind of terrain? Well, he didn't notice that kind of terrain. He assumed that it was kind of like this. So he saw this and he thought, well, there's a house down there. I'll just go for a little walk down here, and there's some paths. But then as it got worse and worse, he didn't turn back, because going back would be against the path of least resistance, which is the path of most resistance, uphill. So by him going down here, as soon as he was around there, he saw, wow, this isn't going to be very easy. Okay. So in a certain sense, it does make sense. When you know all the information, you know you've got the benefit of all the information. Yeah, it doesn't make sense, but that is why he made the mistake, because he didn't have the same knowledge that we do. Then Pure Living Food by Gina says, great commentary and what a sad outcome, and prayers to his family. I do have a couple of questions. Number one, why was he scared to go back to the Airbnb? Seems very sinister. Well, only Mark Williams Thomas can answer that. There is this notion that he was scared. Well, I don't know, where does that come from? Who was he afraid of? I don't know. Why would he take a dangerous route? Well, he didn't know he was taking a dangerous route. Are we sure he was not killed and planted or dumped in the ravine? Number 5, what possessions were on him? Was there a Rolex? And if he fell, how come his phone was beside him? That's not true. We don't actually know where his phone is or was. We don't know any of that. So thanks a lot for those questions. Are there any additional questions in chat? Are there any additional questions in chat? Let's deal with a couple more. The photo of Kasim with the other 2 lads stood in the blocks. How far from there was Jay found? As far as I know, that photo is near the viewpoint, and that's the viewpoint and the ping site are not very far away from one another. So I think the answer to that is about maybe 1.5 miles, something like that. Amanda, what drove this young man that he wasn't prepared to wait 2 hours for a bus? What drove this young man, making him walk in the opposite direction? What drove this young man to make him leave, knowing that his cell phone wasn't charged? Will we ever know? Well, it could be the mafia were like a helicopter was flying over, and it was had like weapons ready. You could have a situation like that. You could have had like a army of mafiosos running over the countryside. You could have had that driving him, or you could have had impatience or insomnia or some kind of drug driving him. Which one do you think is more likely? Margot says, why did his mother receive that text message to say that she would never see her son again? He owed him money. Well, so this person's actually blaming the mother. She kicked off all the assumptions. But that aside, I can't imagine the pain she'll be in right now. That's a life-changing heartbreak. Why did the mother receive that text message? Well, I think because there was someone cynically trying to profit from this. That person should be the object of your scorn, not the mother. Chocolate trees. The confusing thing is that Ayub said that a friend rang him that morning telling him that Jay was lying in a ditch. Again, it's twisting the actual information slightly. Lucy called him. It wasn't a friend. Lucy called him, and I don't know if she said lying in a ditch, just that he had, I think, fallen in a ditch. He'd fallen while he was taking a shortcut. Ian says, my question is simple. What had him so scared that he wouldn't return to the Airbnb? Why would anyone leave the road to traverse that terrain? Because you want to take a shortcut. Because you're seeing the seas right over there, and the road going like this that you've just walked on is much longer. And you don't know the terrain, so you're assuming, and there are hiking paths there, by the way. It's not like impossible to get to the sea without falling. You can just follow a hiking path, and maybe he'd seen one of those maps at the viewpoint and he was trying to find his way to a hiking path. And if he ended up in the Muska ravine, he would have found a hiking path and he would have found his way to the sea, and he wouldn't have fallen. The problem was he was on a weird path that just suddenly ended, and then he continued going. Explore with Sarah Louise says, sorry, this doesn't seem right to me. How is the most logical route for a 19-year-old in shorts, a 12-hour walk? Again, this is something that has come up so many times. We know it was a long walk. He didn't know for sure, and he assumed that it wasn't. That's, I think, a big area that people read it in the media and they interpreted it, they misinterpreted it. I don't think he thought he was going to be doing an 11-hour walk. I think he thought the drive is this long. Google Maps or iPhone Maps says it's such a long walk. Maybe that's an error. But even if it's true, if I cut through here, if I walk along the road, it's a 12-hour walk. But if I cut through here, it might be a lot shorter. And that's another thing with youth. You sometimes think you know better. As I said, just the other day, the three of us were in a situation where the digital thing was saying to us, what you're about to do is kind of unlikely to succeed, but we thought we could do it anyway. And we did succeed, but we only just barely did. And so that is a situation where you lose cell signal, and some of the things you see and you override it because you think you know better. That happens all the time. Okay. I mean, a lot of people make simple assumptions when they're young and they're wrong and they don't die. But sometimes you can make a simple assumption and you are wrong, and then you pay the price. When we were in Cape Town, I remembered I was about the same age as Jay. I was 19 years old, and I did a sea swim. I knew I was getting myself into a very dangerous situation. The water was extremely cold. It was stormy, and I'd forgotten my bathing cap, and I nearly died that day. And I knew exactly what was going on. But you think, I think I can do this. I know better. and you make an assumption. Well, if you're wrong, you could pay a very heavy price for it. And I was wrong, and I almost died. I really came very, very close to dying. And you could say, well, that's really stupid. And the answer is yes, it was. But part of being young is being stupid. Part of being young is taking risks and having experiences in the real world and learning lessons, hopefully, right? That's part of it. Okay, let's go through some of your I must say Adam is making a lot of comments here. No evidence pointing to an accident either, except where he was found and how he was found and his injuries, except that. I mean, that is evidence. Do you know what evidence is? Allegedly innocent says being an outside person growing up riding horses changes how you judge distance. He just misjudged the distance. I mean, a big part of being lost is misjudging distance, terrain, the route through it, all those things. Yeah, I mean, there you go. It's not unexplained why he went in the first place. He went in the first place because he didn't want the party to be over. You kind of got the sense that he couldn't sleep, didn't want to sleep, wasn't ready to settle down, wasn't ready to call it a day. And even when he got to the Airbnb, he still wasn't ready to just, you kind of get the sense that he was wired, that he couldn't sleep. I don't know why you're saying his phone was found beside you. His phone, as far as we know, his phone hasn't been found. Eve says peer pressure can be a driver. I think peer pressure was a driver in this situation. I mean, when you're speaking to Brad, he was laughing about his situation. It was kind of a joke. I also think part of the peer pressure was, okay, I've run out of my battery. I'm going to not just come back with a bus. I'll figure it out. Jane says, I've listened, but my intuition is the same. I don't think your scenario of what happened is correct. Lucy and Olo travels. Okay. Well, that's fine. I just wonder why you're here if you disagree with everything I say. So if you, why are you here? Are you here to be like, I mean, I sometimes go to other channels that I don't agree with, and it kind of just strengthens my opinion as well. Is that what you're doing here? Or are you here just to disagree? I'm just not quite sure I understand. Because, I mean, there are much better channels out there for the whole foul play thing. If you know that I'm not a proponent of foul play, then I don't really understand. So you say your opinion is based on intuition. What about what we know for a fact? Does that count for anything? Do facts matter? Thanks a lot, Bex. I think what you're missing is when you've dealt with a lot of the same cases before that go exactly the same route. The person is found where you expect them to be found. The person is found, they've died almost the day that they disappeared. The person was kind of lost when they disappeared. The person was compromised when they disappeared. The person was also young when they disappeared. When I say that they're young and they they doing things that young people do, like drink and drive, or drink and do whatever. All of that is a risk factor. So yeah, I mean, I think you're ignoring that aspect. And then I think you're also ignoring the statistical aspect, which I won't bore you with, but the statistical probability is that he died in an accident, like many people do in national parks. The statistical aspect doesn't show a likelihood for criminal activity. It shows an unlikelihood for that, but I don't expect you to be interested in that, because it's you are basing whatever you think on just what you believe. I'm basing it on experience and on looking at things and on facts and on paying attention to the details and not getting those details wrong as well, which is quite important. Intertextualities, absolutely. Definitely intertextualities. Another case that for me was very interesting was the search for Nora Corrin. And I wrote a book about that, and it basically went through the same cycle as this one exactly. The little girl disappeared. She was 15, I think 15 years old. And then it became, she's been abducted. Everyone went crazy about that. You had the Madeleine McCann experts come in. You had the whole Malaysian army mobilized. Everyone searched like crazy, and ultimately hikers just found her about a mile and a half from the hotel. They'd been searching much further afield. They eventually found her, and then they said, well, there's no sign of foul play. There's no sign of any injury to her. It looks like she just starved to death. People wouldn't accept that either. And so you have the same thing. And what I'm noticing is that there seems to be a large fraction of British people who become hysterical and histrionic when someone disappears. It's almost like a default setting. Someone's disappeared, and the worst possible thing must have happened. They're abducted. There's some kind of criminal thing going on, and it's like the worst possible thing. And I think this is the legacy of the Madeleine McCann case. The Madeleine McCann case, I don't think Madeleine was abducted, but when you've have the whole British media do that song and dance for 17 years, and naturally you're going to think that. So there's no surprise in that. It's just doesn't really make any sense. There's a similar kind of hysteria going on in America, where when you have the whole thing with what's his name, Thomas Crooks, like the hysteria around, no, he couldn't possibly have been bullied. What if he was? He couldn't possibly have gotten lost and fallen in treacherous conditions. What if he did? It's just like, I'm not going to think about that. I can't think about that. Why not? Why is the likely thing the thing that you won't think about? What's wrong with that? Heidi says people that believe in. Okay, I'm not quite sure what you were talking about there. Zoot says social media geared messages of invincibility, of endurance, has a negative effect. One of the things with social media that social media promises is absolute certainty. Social media promises that you're gonna find somewhere on social media, you're gonna find someone giving you a very, very simple solution to a problem, and it's going to make you feel absolutely good about it. And so you feel like things are very clear, things are very simple, and in some way it reinforces your sense of whatever your belief is in the world or somebody else or your own victimhood or your own self-esteem or whatever. And that is a lie. Nothing in life is that simple or clear cut. Life is kind of muddy and difficult and full of kind of complexity, and even something that's good has kind of a flip side to it. Something that is bad, maybe there's certain elements that are good, but nothing is ever absolutely black and white. But social media promises that, and there are people that love that whole message, that things are just so simple and so easy and so straightforward. But if there's something that they don't agree with it, then they really come to you with, can you prove it? Like can you show me the evidence of that? They just don't have hold that same standard to the other thing. Bria says, Bria, by the way, I'm working on making a trip to France in October. So maybe we will actually meet up later this year. I hope so. Bria says it's more likely that he slipped attempting to walk home than it was that the Airbnb guests all conspired to murder him. Because that is actually what you're talking about. Did someone murder Jay? So what did Jay do that made him a target of murder? Did someone murder Jay because he took their watch? Okay. So that's this terrible crime that's happened here. And you needed the drug underworld and like mafia kingpins to get a watch. Couldn't you just buy another watch? Anthony Stokes says this is why the police they need to give some clarity on the case so the conspiracies can be put to sleep. I disagree. I think the police instead have learned you need to totally shut down all of this nonsense, because no matter what you say, people are going to come up. I've just experienced that myself. No matter what I say, it doesn't matter how many rationales you give, people are just going to say, yeah, but I just don't believe that. My intuition says something else. Okay, well then that's it. I don't know about you guys, but I have studied the law. I do sit in courtrooms. I do prosecute and litigate these sort of cases in terms of evidence. So when you have someone like Adam saying there's no physical evidence, well, there is physical evidence. We've got Jay's body. We know where Jay's body was found. We know how it was found. So it reminds me of the Amanda Knox explanation. At the end of the whole trial, you simplify it to there was no evidence of me at the crime scene. I mean, you can make oversimplifications like that, but it is ultimately an oversimplification. And you can say it over and over again, blah, 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 just doesn't make it true, an oversimplification. John Leach, I think lots of conspiracy happened because so many people were telling lies. So you become suspicious. Okay, so who is telling lies? Like what lies were told? Okay, I'm gonna get rid of Adam. I'm just not enjoying the way he's trying to dominate this chat. Okay, so back to the poll. Was Jay SLATER found where you thought he would be? 40% say no. That's a pretty alarming statistic, I must say. Okay. Yeah, Bria, I know you did try. Pirate Commander says the whack job conspiracies nearly drove me to drink more than usual. It's bonkers. The one where he supposedly thumbed a stolen yacht down. Yeah. Do you remember the one about his phone was found on the beach? And that was actually posted on a Facebook forum as well. I wonder whether they ever took that down. I wonder whether they ever took that down. Because one of the things that you can tell the difference between a cynical content creator and an authentic one is if you've said something that's not true, you should go back and get rid of the thing you said that wasn't true. If you've said something that, kind of in real time, when we came across that whole thing about the phone being found, just seemed very clear that it was an error, or it was something like that. And so I didn't even give any space to that story just because it was simply not true. But you could have made you could have gotten a lot of attention out of something that seemed to be true for a couple of hours, right? That's the difference between someone who's genuine and someone who's not. And does anyone remember the people who made a big deal about the cell phone being found? No, you don't. You just remember being shocked and sensationalized by it. Another click in the bank. Thanks very much. Yeah, picked up by a boat. Yeah. Why do some cases get this attention? I think because there's a degree of ambiguity about it, and certainly in this case, there is a kind of a foul play element. I mean, the guy that he was with towards the end was a convicted drug dealer, not a murderer, but a convicted drug dealer. And so there certainly is that aspect. I also think it gets attention when it resonates in some way with us. I'm not quite sure how the SLATER case resonated with Britons, because so many people there were a lot of people who said he's a criminal. I don't really care what happens to him. But I think maybe it got its start thanks to Lucy and thanks to the family engaging with the media, and then also people like Mark Williams Thomas also dealing with it. Also, it took 29 days to find Jay. If he was found the next day or a week later, then I don't think it would have gained as much traction as it did gain. So, I think that's a little bit about it. Emma says, Auntie Ree, that was a good old, okay. Alison says, everyone assumes he was off his head on drink and drugs. Where's the proof for that? Well, there is no proof. We don't know whether, proof would be in the toxicology. But the fact is he did come back from a rave. If you do want proof, there was talk of him stumbling around on the dance floor. And the fact is, people who go to 3-day raves don't go there in order to be sober. But just in terms of the actual question you're asking, when you're wanting proof, this is really a discussion. So there's not a court case taking place now, and it seems very likely that it was that this is an accident scenario. If you believe it's something else, you're allowed to believe it. I don't think there's going to be any kind of trial, so you can go on believing whatever you want to believe, and good luck to you. I don't think what you believe is based on evidence either, though. I think you've got to kind of bear that in mind. Scott says, if I come back from a rave, it means I'm high on drugs. Okay. Emma says the facts are in a very grey area. Unless we are in the Guardia Civil, we cannot state with any accuracy what is a fact and what is fiction. I don't think that's true. I don't think you can say all of this is so muddy, nobody can say what's true and what's not. I think it's pretty clear what is true and what's not. But you are entitled to believe whatever you want to believe. If that's the case, I really don't know what you're doing on this channel. We try to anchor what we think in things that are credible and likely and probable. So I really don't know what you're doing on this channel. If you one of those people who, well, I believe whatever I want to believe, you're not going to be happy here. So another case that's really bizarre is Sebastian Rogers in Tennessee. That's a kid with autism. I think he's also about the same age, or a bit younger, 15, 16 years old, still at school. And he disappeared and he's still missing. And what's that? Accident or foul play? What's going on there? I was actually in Tennessee, ostensibly to go and investigate that case. I just couldn't rent a car when I was there. Anyway, that's another case. Samantha says, I don't trust the Spanish authorities. Okay. Same thing happened with the Nora Corrin case. They did an inquest. They didn't trust the Malaysian authorities. And, well, you don't have to trust anyone. Pirate Commander says, you're right, there will have to be a coroner's report in England. I think there will be an inquest. And so some additional answers might come as a result of that. Yeah, he has been missing for quite a while. That really is a pretty mysterious case. It's kind of like the next Summer Wells. You know, I must say it is truly horrifying when youngish children go missing and then they just are never ever found. Alison Davies, okay. Let's just deal with a couple of final points. That is what we are here for. Zoot says the whole world was a glow stick that faded out. Yeah. Angel says, like the Nicola Bully case and Sebastian case, it goes mental when personal private information comes onto social media. There are people who say, I can't believe you blocked someone. This is my channel, by the way. So, you know, I can decide if someone is repeatedly nasty, then or repeatedly disagreeable, I can say, I don't really want to be dealing with that. Like, I do have the right to do that. I hope that's okay with you. It's also, you know, by the same token, you can disagree in a way that's kind of sensible, where you don't make a comment every 3 seconds. You can say, I've got a question. What do you think about this? Instead of like almost like shouting over everyone else, you know? I'm not even going to say anything. I've definitely thought about it. I definitely covered it in the beginning. I haven't really dealt with it in a while to want to really go there, but I have some thoughts on it. I haven't really updated myself recently on what has been said, so I'd rather not speculate at this point. Yeah, Caleb Harris. He died. He fell down a manhole, or he also disappeared. He was gone for about 3 months, and same situation. Well, the police feel that it was there's no signs of foul play. Put it that way. I agree with you, Alice. I agree with you. Yeah, I think that's it from my side. I don't know if there's anything else to add. Just do a quick final Jay SLATER search. And this is kind of what's coming up. Jay SLATER's family to fly back with body in 48 hours. Fundraising page hits £70,000. Why it took 29 days to find his body, and so on and so on. So I think I'm probably not going to be covering Jay SLATER very much from here on out. If there's an inquest, I will be covering it. Those of you know me, I've covered quite a few missing persons cases regarding British women and British women who go missing in rivers. I've covered many of those, and none of them involved foul play. Yeah, and so I do think, I don't know, I sort of feel like the British media are kind of dropping the ball. I just wonder why that is. I find the British media very different to the American media. The American media have different sides to it, but the British media just seem more manipulative to me than the American media. That's just my perception. And certainly in this case, I found the British media very manipulative once again. And ultimately, the consensus amongst the British media regarding this case, I thought was incorrect. And with one or two exceptions, I think ITV had some sound analysis, but that was about the only. And there was one or two stories involving an interview with someone that was cogent. But beyond that, I'd say 90% of the coverage was totally misleading and misinformed and not helpful. Earth says, really appreciate your coverage on the women missing near rivers. The UK seems to, Jane says, to me, they should not update. It keeps the fever pitch. I agree with that. Alice says, I've recently returned to your channel since your coverage of the Chris Watts case. I'm really enjoying your coverage of this case. Thanks. So, yeah, I'm probably not going to cover Jay SLATER anymore. If there's an inquest, I will cover that. By the way, I was going to do the number 12 clue we all missed, which was going to be that was going to come out virtually the day that he was found. And the number 12 clue was how did he die? And it was going to be a toss-up between did he die of exposure to the cold or did he die of a fall? And I honestly thought that a fall was less likely, simply because I thought, a person, when you are faced with terrain like this, you know not to climb on the steep parts. So it just seemed, or it seemed to me, if he did fall, it wasn't like a deadly fall. He may have hurt his ankle or he fell off a boulder or something, but he didn't fall to his death. That I kind of found a little bit surprising. And the fact that he did fall to his death, I think, gives you a sense of him being not thinking very sensibly. climbing into a situation where if you fall, you can fall and die isn't very clever. And he got himself into that situation. And so it does make you think, what was he thinking? Which does make you think, was he compromised by some substance? And that does take you away from a pure accident scenario, that instead of driving under the influence, maybe he was walking under the influence in some way. That is, I think, a narrative that is to some extent being concealed from us, that aspect. Okay. Butterfly says, I'm still staying with logic. Okay. E.G. says, this has been thought-provoking and enjoyable. Okay. I will probably move over my analysis to Thomas Crooks. I don't think it's a mystery of what happened there, but I do think what's happening in this case is happening in that case, which is people are choosing to make up the reality that they want. I also think that in that case, it has got a very similar thing to the Vegas shooting. And by the way, I've been to Vegas and I wrote a book covering mass shooters, and I covered Stephen Paddock. And what I think people don't realize is that the motive that is staring everyone in the face is that Stephen Paddock didn't want to live anymore. I mean, Stephen Paddock ultimately took his own life. Did you know that? Did you know that that's how he died? That's the Vegas shooter, the person who's killed the most people in that kind of situation in American history. The same thing applies to Thomas Crooks. His primary motive was that he didn't want to live anymore. His primary motive wasn't that he wants to shoot this person or that person or that person. His primary motive is, I don't want to be alive anymore, but I'm not very happy with how society's treated me, so I'm going to, in my exit, I'm going to make a big statement. I'm not going to die with insignificance. I'm going to die with people are going to remember me. And it's so obvious and so clear, and yet people just can't seem to think about it. And so, again, I've written books on that sort of thing, profiling American shooters. And so I just feel like I'm trying to keep people on the same authentic narrative in terms of this particular one. And I sort of feel like it's important to do that, because to not do that means people just become hysterical. People just choose to think whatever they want to think, and it becomes shocking, and it becomes whatever they want it to be. And what you want it to be ends up being kind of a tribal us versus them thing, when it's not. It's actually, we are losing our humanity. We are losing our common humanity. We are becoming more and more inhuman to one another. And in terms of this search, why do we care about Jay SLATER? Well, it's a 19-year-old that's gone missing. What has happened to him? Instead of it becoming, who is Jay? What is going on in his life? What is it like to be in his shoes? And being somewhat sympathetic to what's going on with him, all of this real ugliness on the side, I must say, it does make me worry where this world is going. It really does make me worry. And in terms of Jay SLATER, the thing that I think everyone underestimated was nature. We underestimated nature, and guess what? We are still underestimating nature at our peril. We are still underestimating nature at our peril, and we are overestimating ourselves. We are overestimating ourselves, and I really hope that that's going to stop. I don't see any sign of it, though. E.G. Moore says, I feel that American law enforcement will do that. Okay. Ash Kitch, hi everyone, I'm so late. Has anyone else been intrigued by the Giselle Salazar case? Allegedly Innocent says, yeah, he did research Ethan Crumbley's parents. By the way, Ethan Crumbley made a 20-minute statement the day before he did everything, and I think I wouldn't be surprised if Thomas Crooks listened to that, and what Ethan Crumbley said resonated with him. I've listened to it, and I do want to share it with you guys, so I'll do that at some point. Thanks a lot, Samantha, and on that positive note, I'm going to bid you guys adieu. I really struggled to find the motivation to do this, just because I knew there was going to be so much negativity. I just found it really hard just to motivate myself to come and do this live. But I knew that there are also some people that know me and support me, and so I did it for you guys. So I appreciate that. Take care, guys. Enjoy the rest of your weekend, and I'll see you guys next time. Ciao. Thanks, mods, as well. Thank you very much.